The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 a.m., just like it did every single morning. Maya Rodriguez rolled over and slapped the snooze button, her hand moving automatically even though her eyes were still closed. 5 more minutes. That's all she needed. Just 5 more minutes of peace before her world started spinning again. But peace was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not when rent was 3 weeks overdue and her grandmother's medicine cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month. Maya, sweet girl, are you awake? Elena's gentle voice drifted through the thin apartment walls. Even at 85, her grandmother was always the first to worry about everyone else. Coming, Grandma, Maya called back, forcing her tired legs to swing out of bed. The cold floor sent a shiver up her spine. The heater had been broken for 2 weeks, but calling a repairman meant money they didn't have. Maya padded to the tiny kitchen and started the coffee maker. The same routine day after day. Coffee first, then help Grandma with her morning pills, then rush off to the first of her 2 jobs. She worked the morning shift at Pete's Diner downtown, then ran across the city to wait tables at a fancy restaurant until closing time. 14 hours of carrying plates and forcing smiles at customers who treated her like she was invisible. You look tired, my dear, Elena said as Maya helped her settle into her favorite chair by the window. The old woman's hands shook slightly as she reached for her pill organizer. Maya pretended not to notice, just like she pretended not to see how much weight her grandmother had lost over the past few months. I'm fine, Grandma. Just need some coffee to wake up. Maya kissed the top of Elena's silver head, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender soap. Some things never changed, and Maya was grateful for that. Elena studied her granddaughter's face with those sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. You work too hard. A beautiful young woman like you should be out dancing, meeting nice young men, having fun. Maya laughed, but it came out more bitter than she intended. Right. Because I have so much time for dancing between my 2 jobs and taking care of you. Don't take care of me because you feel you have to, Elena said quietly. I raised you to live your own life. The words hit Maya right in the chest. She knelt beside her grandmother's chair and took those fragile hands in hers. Grandma, you are my life. You raised me when nobody else would. You worked 3 jobs to put me through school. Now it's my turn to take care of you. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly. She had always been strong. Strong enough to raise a scared 10-year-old girl after that horrible night when the police came to tell them about the car accident. Strong enough to work as a house cleaner well into her 70s to help pay for Maya's college. Strong enough to never let Maya see her cry, even when the doctor bills started piling up like snow in winter. I worry about you being alone, Elena whispered. When I'm gone, who will you have? Don't talk like that. Maya squeezed her grandmother's hands tighter. You're not going anywhere. The doctor said you're tough as nails, remember? But they both knew the truth. The cancer was getting worse. The treatments weren't working as well as they used to. And Maya couldn't afford the newer, better treatments that might actually help. Maya glanced at the clock and jumped up. I have to run, Grandma. Mrs. Patterson from next door will check on you around lunch, okay? Wait, Elena called as Maya grabbed her purse and jacket. Come here for a second. Maya turned back, already calculating how many minutes she could spare without being late. Being late meant angry managers, and angry managers meant fewer hours. And fewer hours meant they couldn't pay for groceries. Elena struggled to her feet and walked to the old wooden dresser that had belonged to Maya's great-grandmother. She pulled out a small velvet box and opened it carefully. Inside was a simple gold ring with a tiny diamond that caught the morning light. This was your great-grandmother's engagement ring, Elena said, holding it out to Maya. And then it was your mother's. I always hoped I'd see you wear it someday. Maya stared at the ring, her throat tightening. Grandma, I know you think there's no time for love with everything else going on. But Maya, sweet girl, life is so short. Shorter than you think when you're 28 years old. Elena's voice cracked slightly. I just want to see you happy. I want to see you with someone who loves you the way your grandfather loved me. Maya took the ring with shaking hands. It was beautiful, even if the diamond was small. She could imagine her mother wearing it, young and hopeful and in love. Before the accident, before everything went wrong. My birthday is coming up, Elena continued. 86 years old. Can you believe that?
And you know what I want more than anything?
More than fancy presents or a big party? Maya shook her head, afraid to speak because she knew her voice would break. I want to see my granddaughter happy, settled, with someone who treats her like the precious gift she is. Elena touched Maya's cheek gently. That's all I want. To know you won't be alone when I can't be here anymore. Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes. How could she explain that she hadn't been on a real date in 3 years? That the last guy she dated had called her too complicated because she couldn't go out whenever he wanted? How could she tell her grandmother that most men ran the other way when they found out she was basically a full-time caregiver? I'll try, Grandma, she managed to say. I promise I'll try. Elena smiled and pulled Maya into a hug that smelled like lavender and hope and all the love in the world. That's all I ask, sweet girl. Just try. Maya left the apartment with the ring burning a hole in her pocket and her grandmother's words echoing in her head. The bus ride to the diner was the same as always. Crowded, smelly, and full of people who looked just as tired as she felt. She stared out the window at the city waking up around her. Business people in expensive suits walked past homeless people sleeping in doorways. Life kept moving for everyone, no matter what was happening in their private worlds. At the diner, Maya tied her apron and started another day of carrying plates and wiping tables and pretending everything was fine. But her grandmother's wish followed her through every order she took and every cup of coffee she poured. By closing time, the weight of it felt heavier than all the plates she'd carried combined. 86 years old. Elena had lived through wars and loss and heartbreak, and all she wanted was to see her granddaughter happy. Maya touched the ring in her pocket and wondered if some wishes were just too big to come true. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed, though Maya didn't know it at the time. She was rushing between tables at Pete's diner, balancing 3 plates on one arm while trying to pour coffee with her free hand. The lunch rush was brutal that day, with every seat filled and a line of hungry customers waiting by the door. That's when she first noticed him. He sat in the corner booth, the one with the ripped vinyl seat that most customers avoided. His clothes looked like they'd seen better days, a faded jacket with holes in the sleeves and boots that had walked too many miles. His dark hair was messy and he needed a shave, but there was something about the way he sat that caught Maya's attention. He wasn't slumped over like he was defeated. He sat straight, watching the world around him with intelligent eyes. Hey, waitress, a businessman at table 6 snapped his fingers at Maya. This guy's been nursing the same cup of coffee for 2 hours. He's taking up space that paying customers could use. Maya glanced over at the man in the corner. She'd refilled his coffee 3 times without him asking, and each time he'd thanked her politely. His voice was different from what she expected. Educated, well-spoken, like he'd grown up in nice neighborhoods and gone to good schools. He is a paying customer, Maya said to the businessman. He ordered coffee and paid for it. That was 2 hours ago, the businessman complained. Look at him. He probably found those quarters in the gutter. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. She'd been judged plenty of times herself, for her second-hand clothes, for living in a cheap apartment, for not having the right things. She knew how it felt to have people look right through you like you didn't matter. Sir, I need to get back to work, she told the businessman, then walked over to the corner booth. More coffee? She asked the mysterious man. He looked up at her with eyes that seemed much older than his face. Only if it's not trouble. I don't want to cause problems for you. No trouble at all, Maya said, filling his cup. That's what I'm here for. He smiled then, and it transformed his entire face. Thank you. Not many people would say that. Over the next few weeks, the man became a regular. He always sat in the same corner booth, always ordered just coffee, and always left exact change plus a small tip that Maya suspected was more than he could afford. She learned his name was David, and bit by bit she started to piece together clues about him. He read newspapers front to back, not just the sports section like most of her customers. He spoke 3 languages. She heard him help a confused tourist couple one day, switching effortlessly between English and Spanish and something that might have been French. When a little girl at a nearby table dropped her crayons, he helped her pick them up and showed her how to draw a perfect flower, his hand steady and sure. But it was the way he treated Elena that really won Maya over. Her grandmother had insisted on visiting the diner one afternoon, claiming she wanted to see where Maya worked. Elena took one look at David sitting alone in his corner and marched right over to him. Young man, she said in her no-nonsense voice, you look like you could use a good meal. Maya rushed over, embarrassed. "Grandma, please don't bother the customers." But David was already standing up, offering Elena his hand with old-fashioned courtesy. "Ma'am, it would be my honor to have lunch with you if you'd allow me to buy." They talked for an hour. Maya watched from behind the counter, amazed at how David listened to every word Elena said, nodding and asking thoughtful questions about her stories from the old country. When Elena mentioned her upcoming birthday, David's face lit up with genuine interest. 86 years, he said with reverence. "You must have seen so much history." "Too much," Elena laughed. "But I'm not done yet. I have important business to finish first." She looked meaningfully at Maya, who felt her cheeks burn. Even with the stranger, Elena couldn't help but hint about her granddaughter needing to find someone special. After Elena left that day, David started asking Maya little questions. How long had she been taking care of her grandmother? Did she have other family? What did she do when she wasn't working? "I don't really have time for much else," Maya admitted one quiet afternoon. "Between this job and my evening shift at Rosario's downtown, plus taking care of Grandma, there aren't enough hours in the day." "2 jobs?" David raised his eyebrows. "That's exhausting. It pays the bills. Most of them, anyway." Maya wiped down the table next to his booth, not meeting his eyes. "Medical expenses are expensive." David was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Your grandmother is lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," Maya said automatically. "She raised me when nobody else would." As Elena's birthday got closer, Maya found herself getting more and more anxious. Her grandmother had started dropping hints every single day about wanting to see Maya settled. She'd point out nice-looking men on the street, or mention neighbors' granddaughters who'd gotten married recently. The pressure was constant and loving and absolutely crushing. Maya started working extra shifts to pay for Elena's birthday party. Nothing fancy, just cake and decorations for their tiny apartment, maybe enough food for the few neighbors who might stop by. But even that small celebration was stretching their budget to the breaking point. It all came to a head on a rainy Thursday evening. Maya had finished her shift at the fancy restaurant and dragged herself back to Pete's Diner to pick up her paycheck. The place was empty except for David, who sat in his usual spot with a book. "We're closed," Maya called out, then realized it was him. "Oh, David, hey, Pete must have forgotten to lock up." "He said I could wait here until the rain stopped," David said. "I hope that's okay." Maya slumped into the booth across from him, too tired to care about professional boundaries. Her feet hurt, her head hurt, and she'd spilled wine on her uniform during the dinner rush. She felt like she was drowning, and the only person who might understand was this strange, kind man who spent his days in coffee shops. "You look like you've had a rough night," David said gently. That's when Maya broke. She told him everything, about Elena's birthday wish, about feeling guilty for being single when her grandmother's biggest dream was to see her settled, about working 2 jobs and still falling behind on bills, about being so tired she could barely think straight, let alone meet someone special. "I know it sounds stupid," she said, wiping tears she didn't remember starting to cry, "but Grandma keeps talking about wanting to see me married before she can't anymore, and I can't even find time to go on a coffee date, much less fall in love and plan a wedding." David listened without interrupting, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finally stopped talking, he was quiet for a long time. "What if," he said carefully, "you didn't have to find time to fall in love?" Maya looked up at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "What if you could give your grandmother what she wants without all the complicated relationship stuff?" David leaned forward slightly. "What if someone was willing to help you just for one day?" "Help me how?" David took a deep breath. "What if someone married you? Just for your grandmother's birthday party. Just so she could see you settled and happy. A real ceremony, real papers, but temporary. One day." Maya stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "David, that's crazy. Why would anyone do that?" "Because sometimes people need help," he said simply. "And because your grandmother deserves to have her birthday wish come true." The rain drummed against the diner windows as Maya tried to process what he'd just offered. This man, this mysterious stranger who lived on the margins and survived on coffee and kindness, was offering to marry her for a day just to make an old woman happy. "You don't even know me," she whispered. David smiled that transformative smile again. "I know enough. I know you work 2 jobs to take care of someone you love. I know you defend strangers when other people are cruel. I know you refill coffee cups without being asked and remember how people like their eggs cooked. He paused. I know you're a good person who deserves to have someone help her for once. Maya felt more tears coming. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, David said quietly. I'm offering. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing the city clean for another day. Maya didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, David's words spinning through her mind like a broken record. Marry him. A real ceremony. Just for one day. Just to make Elena happy. It was the craziest thing she'd ever heard. It was also the most tempting. By morning, she'd convinced herself it was a terrible idea. David was essentially a stranger who lived on the streets. She didn't know his last name, where he came from, or why he spent his days in diners. What if he was running from something? What if he was dangerous? But then she remembered the way he'd listened to Elena's stories. The gentleness in his voice when he spoke to the little girl with the crayons. The way he'd offered to help without asking for anything in return. Maya dragged herself through her morning shift, distracted and clumsy. She spilled coffee on 2 customers and mixed up 3 orders. When she finally saw David walk through the door at his usual time, her heart started racing. He didn't mention their conversation from the night before. He just ordered his coffee and sat in his corner booth with a book, like always. But Maya could feel him watching her, waiting to see what she would decide. Finally, during her break, she slipped into the seat across from him. I've been thinking about what you said, she began carefully. David closed his book and gave her his full attention. And it's crazy, Maya said. You know that, right? It's completely insane. Most good things are a little insane, David replied with a small smile. Maya took a deep breath. Why would you do this for me? For someone you barely know? David was quiet for a long moment, staring down at his coffee cup. When he looked up, there was something sad and distant in his eyes. Let's just say I know what it's like to wish you could make someone you love happy, even if it seems impossible, he said. Your grandmother raised you, took care of you, sacrificed for you. Now she's asking for one thing. One simple thing that would mean the world to her. Marriage isn't simple, Maya protested. It can be, David said. For one day it can be whatever we need it to be. Maya felt tears prick her eyes again. What if she gets too attached? What if she starts planning for grandchildren and asking when you're moving in permanently? We'll deal with that when it happens, David said gently. But Maya, look at this practically. Your grandmother's birthday is in 5 days. You said yourself that the doctors aren't sure how much time she has left. This might be your only chance to give her what she wants. The words hit Maya like a punch to the chest because they were true. Elena's last blood work hadn't been good. The cancer was spreading faster than the treatments could keep up with. They might have months or they might have weeks. There was no way to know. Okay, Maya whispered. Okay, let's do it. David's face lit up with genuine happiness. Really? Really? But we need rules, Maya said quickly. This is business. A favor between friends. Nothing more, and of course, David agreed. What kind of rules? 1 day only. We get married in the morning, have the party that evening, and then it's over. We get the marriage annulled as soon as possible afterward. Maya was talking fast now, trying to convince herself this was manageable, and we need to keep our stories straight. How we met, how long we've been together, all of that. We met at the diner, David said. I was going through a rough patch and you were kind to me when no one else was. We started talking, became friends, and friendship turned into something more. It's not really a lie. Maya felt her cheeks warm. It wasn't really a lie, was it? She did care about David, more than she probably should for someone she'd known for just a few weeks. What about the legal stuff? She asked. Marriage licenses, all of that? Leave that to me, David said. I'll handle all the paperwork. Something in his tone made Maya pause. He sounded so confident, so sure of himself. Like navigating legal bureaucracy was something he did regularly. How do you know about that stuff? She asked. David's expression became guarded. I've had to deal with government offices before. You pick things up. It wasn't really an answer, but Maya was too nervous about the whole plan to push for more details. The next few days passed in a blur. David somehow managed to get all the necessary paperwork together with surprising efficiency. He even arranged for them to have the ceremony at the courthouse on Saturday morning, just hours before Elena's party. How did you manage all this so fast? Maya asked when he showed up at the diner with the marriage license. I know people, David said vaguely. Sometimes living on the streets means you meet all kinds of folks who can help with things like this. Maya nodded, but something nagged at the back of her mind. David didn't talk like someone who'd been homeless for long. His grammar was too perfect, his vocabulary too sophisticated. And how did a homeless person get a marriage license processed in 3 days when it usually took weeks? But she pushed those thoughts away. Elena's party was tomorrow, and Maya had bigger things to worry about. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly. Maya met David at the courthouse steps, both of them dressed in their nicest clothes. For Maya, that meant a simple blue dress she'd bought at a thrift store for job interviews. For David, Maya barely recognized him. Gone were the faded jacket and worn-out boots. Instead, he wore a dark gray suit that fit him perfectly, crisp white shirt and polished shoes. His hair was neatly styled and he'd shaved. He looked like a completely different person. He looked expensive. Wow, Maya breathed. You look different? David asked, tugging at his tie nervously. Handsome, Maya finished, then immediately felt embarrassed for saying it. David smiled, and for a moment all her doubts disappeared. You look beautiful, he said. Elena's going to be so happy. The ceremony itself was brief and businesslike. They stood before a judge who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else and recited vows that felt both meaningless and surprisingly significant. When David slipped a simple gold band onto Maya's finger, where had he gotten a wedding ring? Her hands were shaking. You may kiss the bride, the judge said in a bored voice. David looked at Maya questioningly. She nodded, and he leaned in to give her a soft, brief kiss that somehow made her stomach flutter. Congratulations, the judge said, already reaching for the next set of papers on his desk. You're married. That evening, their tiny apartment was transformed. David had somehow managed to arrange for flowers. Real ones, not the cheap grocery store bouquets Maya had planned on. He'd also brought string lights that turned their cramped living room into something magical. But the biggest surprise was Elena's face when they walked in together. Maya, she gasped, struggling to get up from her chair. You didn't tell me you were bringing someone special. Grandma, Maya said, her voice shaking with nerves and emotions she couldn't name. I'd like you to meet my husband, David. Elena's eyes filled with tears as David stepped forward and took her hands in both of his. Mrs. Rodriguez, he said with perfect sincerity, it's an honor to be part of your family even if I'm new to it. Husband, Elena whispered, looking back and forth between them. You got married? This morning, Maya said. We wanted to surprise you for your birthday. Elena burst into tears, happy tears that she wiped away with shaking hands. This is the best birthday present an old woman could ask for, she said. To see my Maya so happy, so loved. The party was small, just a few neighbors, Mrs. Patterson from next door, and old Mr. Gonzalez from downstairs. But David charmed everyone. He helped serve cake, told funny stories that made Elena laugh until she had to wipe her eyes, and treated Maya with such genuine affection that she almost forgot they were pretending. When Elena opened her presents, David produced a small wrapped box that Maya hadn't seen before. This is from both of us, he said, winking at Maya. Elena unwrapped it carefully and gasped. Inside was an antique music box, beautifully crafted with intricate details. When she wound it up, it played a melody Maya recognized, the same song Elena used to hum when Maya was little. How did you know? Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. Maya told me you loved music, David said simply. I thought you might like this. But Maya hadn't told him that. She'd never mentioned Elena's love of music or the songs from her childhood, or anything that would have helped him choose such a perfect gift. Who was this man she'd married? And how could a homeless person afford something that looked like it belonged in a museum? As the evening wound down and the last neighbors headed home, Maya found herself watching David clean up their tiny kitchen. He moved with easy confidence, like he was comfortable in any situation. When he laughed at something Elena said, Maya felt something warm and dangerous bloom in her chest. This was supposed to be pretend. One day, then over. So why did it feel so real? Thank you, Elena said to David as Maya helped her get ready for bed. For making my granddaughter so happy. I can see it in her eyes. She loves you very much. Maya's cheeks burned. If Elena could see love in her eyes, what did that mean? And more importantly, what was she going to do when tomorrow came and David disappeared from their lives forever? Maya woke up to silence, and somehow that felt wrong. She lay in bed for a moment trying to figure out what was different. Then she remembered yesterday had been Elena's birthday party, her wedding day. The day she'd married a homeless man named David to make her grandmother happy. The day that had felt more real than any pretend marriage should have. Maya sat up and listened for sounds from the kitchen. Usually David would have been up by now, making coffee and chatting quietly with Elena. They'd stayed up late the night before, the three of them, talking and laughing like they'd been a family for years instead of hours. But the apartment was completely quiet. Maya grabbed her robe and padded to the kitchen, expecting to find David asleep on their tiny couch. Instead, she found a stack of official-looking papers on the kitchen table, held down by the salt shaker so they wouldn't blow away. No David. No note. Just papers covered in legal language that made Maya's head spin. She picked up the first document and tried to make sense of it. Marriage certificate signed in official. Then another paper that looked like some kind of legal contract. Then bank statements, but these couldn't be right. The numbers had too many zeros. Maya? Elena's voice called from the bedroom. Is David making breakfast? It smells different today. Maya realized she hadn't even started the coffee yet. She was too busy staring at papers that didn't make any sense. No, Grandma. He must have stepped out. I'll make coffee in a minute. But even as she said it, Maya knew David hadn't just stepped out. You don't leave legal documents on someone's kitchen table if you're planning to come back in an hour. The knock on the door came at exactly 9:00. Maya peered through the peephole and saw a woman in an expensive-looking navy suit, carrying a leather briefcase. She looked like a lawyer or maybe a banker, definitely not the type of person who usually knocked on Maya's door. Maya Rodriguez, the woman asked when Maya opened the door. Yes? My name is Christina Park. I work for David Cross. May I come in? Maya stared at her. David Cross? I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong person.
I know a David, but his last name isn't Cross. Christina smiled patiently.
David Nathaniel Cross III, actually. The man you married yesterday morning at the downtown courthouse. May I come in? I think we need to talk. Maya's world tilted sideways. She stepped back automatically, letting Christina into the apartment. Her mind was racing but not making any connections. David Cross? She'd never heard that name before in her life. I'm sorry, Maya said, closing the door with shaking hands. I think there's been some kind of mistake. The man I married is David. She realized with a shock that she'd never actually learned David's last name. In all their conversations, all their time together, it had never come up. How was that possible? David didn't tell you his full name? Christina asked gently. I thought he might not have. He's been going by just his first name for the past 6 months. Maya sank into a kitchen chair, still clutching her robe closed. Who are you? And how do you know about our marriage? We literally just got married yesterday. Christina sat down across from her and opened her briefcase with practiced efficiency. I'm David's personal assistant. I handle his legal affairs, among other things. Marriage licenses are public record, Mrs. Cross. When someone with David's profile gets married, certain people are notified automatically. Mrs. Cross? Maya repeated faintly. That's your legal name now, Christina confirmed. Which brings me to why I'm here. There are some things about your husband that you need to know. Maya felt like she was in a dream, a very strange, very confusing dream where people called her Mrs. Cross and talked about her homeless husband, like he was important somehow. David asked me to come here because he had to leave town unexpectedly, Christina continued. There was a family emergency, business emergency actually. He'll explain everything when he talks to you himself. Where is he? Maya managed to ask. New York. He had to fly out at 6 this morning. Christina pulled out a folder and set it on the table. But first, let me explain who David really is. Maya stared at the folder like it might bite her. I don't understand any of this. David Nathaniel Cross III is the heir to Cross Industries, Christina said carefully, watching Maya's face.
It's a
multinational corporation that his great-grandfather built. His grandfather expanded and his father ran until his death 2 years ago. David is now the CEO and primary shareholder. The words hit Maya like physical blows. CEO, corporation, heir. None of these words had anything to do with the man who'd sat in Pete's diner drinking coffee and reading. Newspapers, that's impossible, Maya said. David is homeless. He lives on the streets. He orders coffee and makes it last for hours because he can't afford anything else. Christina's expression was gentle but serious. Maya, Cross Industries is worth approximately $3.2 billion. David is one of the wealthiest men in America. The room started spinning. Maya gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. You're lying. You have to be lying. Why would a billionaire pretend to be homeless? Why would he hang out in a cheap diner? Why would he marry a waitress he barely knows? I think David should answer those questions himself, Christina said. But I can tell you that he's been living on the streets for the past 6 months as part of what his therapist calls grounding therapy. After his father's death and a difficult divorce, David fell into a severe depression. He felt disconnected from reality, from real human experiences. The therapist suggested he spend time living without his wealth and status to remember who he is underneath all of that. Maya felt sick. So this was all some kind of experiment? Some rich guy playing dress up with poor people? No, Christina said firmly. David's feelings for you and your grandmother are completely genuine. He's talked about both of you constantly for the past month. This marriage might have started as a favor, but it's become much more than that for him. Maya laughed, but it came out bitter and sharp. Right. I'm sure billionaires fall for waitresses all the time. Christina reached into her folder and pulled out several photographs. Maya's breath caught when she saw them. Pictures from Elena's birthday party. David helping Elena cut her cake. Maya and David dancing in their tiny living room. The three of them laughing together like a real family. He hired a photographer? Maya whispered. He wanted to remember every moment, Christina said softly. Maya, I've worked for David for 5 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you in these pictures. Maya stared down at the photos, her vision blurring with tears she couldn't stop. In the pictures, David looked happy. Really, truly happy. And so did she. But it was all built on lies. The marriage is legally binding, Christina continued. David wanted me to make sure you understood that. If you want an annulment, his lawyers can make it happen quickly and quietly. But if you're willing to talk to him first... She pulled out a phone and set it on the table next to the photos. His private number is programmed in. He's hoping you'll call. Maya stared at the phone like it was a snake. I can't talk to him right now. I understand, Christina said. This is a lot to process. But Maya, there's one more thing you should know. She pulled out another document. This one looked like a check. But Maya couldn't focus on the numbers. David instructed me to set up accounts to cover all of your grandmother's medical expenses. The experimental treatments her doctors mentioned? The ones insurance won't cover? They're all paid for as long as she needs them. Maya's hands flew to her mouth. Oh no, I can't accept that. That's too much. It's what family does for family, Christina said gently. And you're his wife now, which makes Elena his family too. The tears came then, hot and fast and unstoppable. Maya buried her face in her hands and sobbed. From shock, from gratitude, from anger, from emotions she couldn't even name. How could David have lied to her? How could he have let her believe he was someone else entirely? But how could she be angry about lies when those lies had led to Elena getting the medical care she needed? Maya, dear. Elena's voice came from the doorway. What's wrong? Who is this lady? Maya looked up to see her grandmother standing there in her nightgown, looking frail but concerned. How was she supposed to explain this? How was she supposed to tell Elena that her new grandson-in-law wasn't who they thought he was? Grandma, Maya said, wiping her eyes. This is Christina. She works for David. She came to tell us that he had to go out of town for a while. Elena's face fell. Oh, well, that's disappointing. I was hoping to make him breakfast. Will he be back soon? Maya looked at Christina, who nodded encouragingly toward the phone. I don't know, Grandma, Maya said honestly. I guess I need to call him and find out. After Christina left, Maya sat alone in her kitchen holding the phone David had sent. Elena had gone back to bed, tired from all the excitement. The apartment felt empty without David's presence, and Maya realized how quickly she'd gotten used to having him around. $3.2 billion. The number was so big Maya couldn't even really comprehend it. She thought about David's perfect suit at the courthouse, the expensive antique music box, the way he'd handled all the legal paperwork so efficiently. The signs had been there, but she'd been too overwhelmed by everything else to see them. Maya looked at the photos Christina had left behind. In every single one, David was looking at her or Elena like they were the most precious things in the world. If he was acting, he was the best actor who'd ever lived. But if he wasn't acting, then maybe the homeless man she'd fallen for and the billionaire he really was could somehow be the same person. Maya picked up the phone and stared at David's number on the screen. One call and she'd have answers to all her questions. One call, and she'd know if any of this was real. Her finger hovered over the call button as the morning sun streamed through her tiny kitchen window, lighting up the papers that had changed everything. Maya stared at the phone for 3 hours before she finally found the courage to press David's number. She'd spent those hours pacing around the apartment, looking at the photos Christina had left behind and trying to make sense of everything. Every few minutes, she'd pick up the phone, then put it back down. What was she supposed to say? How do you start a conversation with someone who lied about everything, even if those lies had somehow led to the most magical day of your life? Elena had tried to help. She'd shuffled into the kitchen around noon, taken one look at Maya's face, and immediately started making tea. You know, Elena said as she settled into her chair with her steaming cup. In my 86 years, I've learned that sometimes the most important conversations are the hardest ones to start. What if he doesn't answer? Maya asked. What if this whole thing was just some rich guy's weird experiment, and now he's moved on to something else? Elena reached over and patted Maya's hand with her own shaky one. Sweet girl, I watched that man look at you last night. That wasn't an experiment. That was love. The words hit Maya right in the chest. Love. Was that what she'd seen in David's eyes when they danced in their tiny living room? When he'd helped Elena cut her birthday cake? When he'd kissed her at the courthouse? Finally, Maya took a deep breath and pressed call. The phone rang twice before David answered. Maya? His voice sounded different, strained, worried, hopeful all at once. Christina said she talked to you. I wasn't sure if you'd call. I wasn't sure either, Maya admitted. David, who are you, really? There was a long pause. Maya could hear traffic in the background, the sounds of a busy city that definitely wasn't Chicago. I'm the same person who sat in Pete's diner every day, David said quietly. I'm the same person who danced with you in your living room last night. The same person who thinks your grandmother is one of the most amazing women I've ever met. He paused. I'm just also someone who inherited more money than any person should ever have. Why didn't you tell me? Maya's voice cracked despite her efforts to stay calm. All those weeks, all those conversations, you let me buy you coffee because I thought you couldn't afford it. You let me worry about whether you had a place to sleep. Because for the first time in 2 years, someone looked at me and saw just David, he said. Not David Cross the billionaire, not the guy whose face is on magazine covers. Just David, a regular person who read newspapers and talked to waitresses and helped little girls pick up their crayons. His voice got softer. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How precious? Maya felt tears starting again. But it was all fake. Your clothes, your situation, everything. My feelings weren't fake, David said immediately. Maya, I've been thinking about this all morning, trying to figure out how to explain it. When my father died, I inherited everything. The company, the houses, the money, all of it. But I also inherited all the people who only wanted to be around me because of those things. I couldn't tell who liked David and who liked what David could buy them. Maya sank into her kitchen chair, phone pressed tight against her ear. After my divorce, I realized I didn't even know who I was anymore without all that stuff, David continued. My therapist suggested I spend time living without any of it, just to remember what it felt like to be a regular person, to have regular conversations with regular people who didn't want anything from me. So you went homeless, Maya said. I went anonymous, David corrected. And then I met you, and for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. You didn't care that my jacket had holes in it or that I couldn't afford a real meal. You just cared about me, as a person. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her free hand. David, I know I should have told you the truth, he said quickly, especially before we got married. Even if it was supposed to be temporary, you had a right to know. But I was scared that if you knew who I really was, everything would change. Everything has changed anyway, Maya pointed out. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Maya. David's voice broke a little. Christina told me about your grandmother's treatments. I hope you're not angry about that. When she mentioned those experimental therapies, I couldn't stand the thought of Elena not getting the best care possible because of money. Maya closed her eyes. How could she be angry about David saving her grandmother's life? But how could she trust someone who'd built their entire relationship on a lie? "Where are you now?" she asked. "New York. My penthouse apartment that I haven't lived in for 6 months." David laughed, but it sounded sad. "It's huge and expensive and completely empty. Nothing like your kitchen table where we all ate birthday cake together." Maya felt something twist in her chest. "Are you going back to your old life now? Now that your therapy experiment is over?" "I don't know," David said honestly. "I can't go back to living on the streets, not now that people know who I am again. But I don't want to go back to the way things were before either. Maya, these past few weeks with you and Elena, that's the happiest I've been in years. Maybe ever." They sat in silence for a moment, connected by the phone line but separated by so much more than just miles. "I want to see you," David said finally. "Will you come to New York?" "Just to talk. I'll send a plane, cover all your expenses, bring Elena if she's up for traveling." Maya's first instinct was to say no. The gap between their worlds felt impossibly wide now, but then she thought about Elena's face at the party, how happy her grandmother had been to see Maya married and settled. "I can't bring Elena," Maya said. "She's not strong enough for that kind of trip right now. But maybe I could come alone, just for a day or two." "Really?" David sounded like she'd just offered him the moon. "I want to see who you really are," Maya said. "All of it. The penthouse, the company, everything. Because if we're going to figure out what happens next, I need to understand your world." "What happens next?" David repeated carefully. Maya looked down at the wedding ring still on her finger, the simple gold band David had somehow produced for their courthouse ceremony. "We're married, David, legally married." "That means something, even if we didn't plan it that way." 2 days later, Maya found herself stepping off a private plane at a New York airport she'd only seen in movies. David was waiting for her, looking impossibly handsome in an expensive suit that probably cost more than Maya made in 6 months. But when he smiled at her, he looked exactly like the man who danced with her in her living room. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi," Maya replied, suddenly shy. David's driver took them through Manhattan in a car that was probably worth more than Maya's entire apartment building. Maya pressed her face to the window, watching the city rush past. She'd never been to New York before, never imagined she'd see it like this. "Nervous?" David asked. "Terrified," Maya admitted. "Your assistant Christina seemed nice, but I keep thinking about how many people are going to judge me. The waitress who married a billionaire for his money. Anyone who says that doesn't know you," David said firmly. "Besides, technically you married me when you thought I was homeless and broke. If you were after money, you picked the wrong guy." Maya laughed despite herself. "Good point." David's penthouse was everything Maya had imagined and nothing like she'd expected. It was huge, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the entire city spread out below. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum, and there were actual works of art on the walls, but it also felt cold and empty, like a beautiful hotel room where nobody actually lived. "It's not very homey, is it?" David said, noticing her expression. "It's beautiful," Maya said carefully. "Just very different from what I'm used to." David walked over to a side table and picked up a framed photo that made Maya's breath catch. It was one of the pictures from Elena's party, the 3 of them laughing together at the tiny kitchen table. "I had this printed yesterday," David said. "It's the only thing in this entire apartment that feels real to me." Maya felt tears prick her eyes again. "David, I know this is overwhelming," he said, setting the photo down and turning to face her. "I know my world probably seems impossible to navigate. But Maya, I meant what I said on the phone. These past few weeks with you have been the most real thing in my life. I don't want to lose that." "What are you saying?" David took a deep breath. "I'm saying that our marriage might have started as a favor, but I don't want it to end as one. I'm saying that I've fallen in love with a waitress from Chicago who treats everyone with kindness and takes care of her grandmother and makes the best coffee I've ever had." Maya stared at him. "You love me?" "I love you," David said simply. "I love the way you defended me to that rude businessman at the diner. I love how you light up when you talk about Elena. I love that you see people for who they are inside, not what they have or don't have on the outside." He stepped closer. "I love that you married a homeless stranger just to make your grandmother happy." "I love you too," Maya whispered, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I've been trying not to, because I thought you were someone I couldn't have. But I fell in love with the man who listened to Elena's stories and helped kids with their crayons and offered to marry me just to be kind. David's face broke into the biggest smile Maya had ever seen. So what do we do now? Maya looked around the penthouse, then back at David's hopeful face. I guess we figure out how to make this work. Your world and mine. Somehow. I have some ideas about that, David said. What if I told you I've been thinking about moving the company's headquarters to Chicago? What if I told you I want to start a foundation that helps families with medical expenses, like what Elena's going through? What if I told you I'd rather live in a tiny apartment with you than in this penthouse alone? Maya felt her heart swell with possibility. I'd say that sounds like the David I fell in love with talking. 6 months later, Maya stood in the same courthouse where she and David had first gotten married, but this time everything was different. Elena sat in the front row looking stronger than she had in months thanks to the treatments that were actually working. The tiny courtroom was packed with friends from the diner, neighbors from their building, and even some of David's business associates who'd become real friends. Do you, Maya Rodriguez Cross, take David to be your husband, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for as long as you both shall live? Maya looked at David, who'd insisted on wearing the same suit from their first wedding. She thought about everything that had brought them to this moment, the lies that had led to truth, the fake marriage that had become real love, the homeless man who'd turned out to be the richest person she'd ever met and also the kindest. I do, she said, meaning it with every piece of her heart. And when Elena stood up and cheered, Maya knew that sometimes the most beautiful stories start with the craziest ideas.